to Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So this is podcast 99. This month we're talking about coaching your staff according to their style. So what's that mean? It means that you've got your own preferred operating system that works at a certain pace and likes to stack tasks in a certain way. You might like to meet with people to get your work done in meetings. You might prefer to close your door and work uninterrupted for hours at a time. Your staff has their own preferences too. So how do we meet in the middle? So we're going to talk about that today in terms of determining their style versus your own and what you can do about it. So if you're just catching up with us, what we're relying on is a personality assessment called the DISC. And the DISC basically divides people based on whether they're more outgoing or more reserved, if they're more warm and accepting or questioning and skeptical. And based on those answers, they're distributed in 4 quadrants and kind of looks like the face of a clock. And the dominant style, the get it done, is this between 9 p.m. or a.m. and 12 o'clock. And then we have this really ebullient style that, just loves to include people and is really inclusive. And that's the I style, and that's between 12 and 3. Those 2 types are really outgoing, love people. Then we move to the bottom half of the circle, and we have our steady style. And this is the peacekeeper. This wants everybody to get along. Tends to be more reserved, but also is warm and accepting. So the I and the S have the commonality of warm and accepting. And then we have the C. And the C is, I would like to say that they are obsessed with accuracy, getting things right. So they share that reserved style with their S colleagues, but they also share the questioning and skeptical style with their D colleagues. So the S is between that 3 and 6. The C is between that 6 and 9. So then we've got our full circle. Now, if I asked you, what kind of leader were you today? Most really emotionally intelligent, experienced leaders will say, well, for what meeting? I was 20 different leaders today. It really depended on the person they were interacting with and what the situation called for. Now, some of you might be thinking, wow, what a chameleon. They don't really have their own brand or their own style of leadership. But that's not true. They still stay within the boundaries of what's important to them and how they like to operate. But they're also doing it in a way that is compassionate and considerate of the people that they're interacting with. And that's how we get the most work done. It's that little bit of compromise, adapting, providing the amount of information, the pace, all of that they really need and crave. So as leaders, as parents, we really want to adapt in an agile way to what our reports or our kids most need and what's appropriate in that situation. So if you think about being emotionally intelligent, whether you're evaluating your staff members or each one of your children, they need different things to thrive. So let's talk about the dominant style today. So if you need an avatar to kind of, focus in your head, I would say LeBron James, gotta be D. Very outspoken, likes to be in the limelight, pretty demanding. Donald Trump's another D style. You know, most people go, those two aren't anything alike. But the things that really make them click are those same items. You know, their whole mantra is get it done. And they both act on that. You can see it throughout each of their careers. If you look at their lists of accomplishments, you know, it's definitely get it done style. So if you think about those folks, you know, they don't shy away from sharing their opinion. They really enjoy clarity. When people have gone too far, they want them to back off. And they operate for what the situation calls for, right? So if I got to take over to win the game, I'm going to do that. If I got to eliminate half my staff to make this thing happen, I'm going to do that. So they have used that D style to help them get stuff done. Now, some of you might be going, well, I don't want to be a D based on those things. Well, you have to think those people have accomplished a great deal. And I would tell you that most CEOs are probably not naturally Ds, but they have adapted their style to be a D because they have to interact with stakeholders, boards of directors, stockholders, general public, you name it. So it's probably not their preferred state, but they have to adapt their style to do that. Now, when you look at the team member or the child that you're thinking about, that you want to interact with, that you want to adapt your style to, ask yourself this question. Are they more fast-paced and outgoing, or are they more reserved and they like to work at a slower, more methodical pace? Okay, that's going to tell you if they're between the 9 and the 3, that top half of the clock. And if they're not, you know, if they're more fast-paced, that's the top half of the clock. The slower paced is the bottom half of the clock. Okay. And then when you interact with them, you know, do they want to get deep and understand how your weekend went and, you know, really kind of warm up and create some rapport with you? Or are they just like, okay, what do we got to do? Let's get down to brass tacks here. That information will tell you probably whether they're more warm and accepting or questioning and skeptical. Now, if you're saying to yourself, well, what about this? You're already, I can tell you're on the questioning and skeptical side. So these are people who are like, why are we doing it? Why does this make sense? What's in it for me? How are we measuring the success of this project? You know, the more warm and accepting people will be, wow, that sounds really interesting. I bet the customers will be super excited about it. Or, yeah, I can't wait for a play date today, whatever it is. So based on those, so let me give you the rest of the avatars, since I gave you the D avatar just for fun. So the I avatar, their whole soundbite is let's get together. These are the people who love to do their work in meetings. They love to host parties and things like that. They want to get people together. They love camaraderie. They love to kick things off. They have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And in fact, on the disc, you know, we make the I lowercase because it's like, we got to tamp those people down a little bit. They're so excited. Sometimes they get the bad rap that they're just like rah and not substance. So that's unfortunate because these people really create a lot of momentum and motivation, which every project needs. So the avatar for them is Richard Branson. So Richard Branson, it wasn't just enough, you know, to be like Virgin Airlines. It was like, oh, I got to do hot air balloon racing. I got to go to space. I got to do this, you know. Pretty flamboyant personality, you know, always up for a challenge, that kind of thing. The I personality type I'm sorry, the S personality type is really that steadiness style. This is a warm and accepting person, but a little more reserved, doesn't like necessarily want to be in the limelight. Big peacekeeper, wants everybody to get along. That's their soundbite. Let's all get along, okay? And the perfect avatar for this is Oprah. So if you think about Oprah's show, she was kind of sitting one-on-one, still, on the OWN channel. She does a lot of one-on-one or small group interviews. She really likes to have that intimate conversation that's very deep. She's, even though she's in some of the tabloids, it's not like, she's hanging out for that purpose. It's just she happens to be there and one of the most recognized people in the world. So when we look at the S type, that's really what we're looking at. And then it comes to the C. Again, the C is more reserved, but questioning and skeptical. And their whole soundbite is, let's get it right. They want to be accurate. I can't tell you how many times I have been in meetings with this type. They don't say anything for 3 hours. I think, oh my gosh, they're not even paying attention. And then somebody throws up a slide and the slide has a piece of data that they happen to disagree with. And they will be like up out of their chair going, no way, that's not right. They will argue to the teeth to make sure that it's appropriate and accurate. So, Steve Jobs is the perfect avatar for this. Apple was not the first to get things done, but they came out and did it the right way. So if you think about the dominance of the iPhone, if you think about the iPod, if you think about the iPad, all of those things, they were not the first. They weren't the leaders to come out with it, but they worked with their customer to make sure they got it right. So those are the 4 types, the 4 sound bites in terms of their mantra, and the 4 avatars. So hopefully this gives you an idea of, each of my kids is, I've got 1 Branson and 2 Oprahs. Or, with my team, I've got, a LeBron James, I got an Oprah, I got, 2 or 3 Steve Jobs, and I got, 1 Richard Branson, because it's hard to have more than 1 Richard Branson on a team. So, and of course, they all have different needs. And so how do you get the team to get along? How do you get the team to communicate? The further apart they are on the clock, the more they have to work and be intentional to get along, to express their ideas in a way that the other person can understand it, that they can compromise on the priorities. The I is going to be like, hey, let's have a ticker tape parade and we'll have this big announcement. I think there's probably a lot of I's in marketing. And then the C's will be like, hold on, what's our budget? And are we going to meet the deadline and things like that? So they have different priorities when it comes to how they operate and what's important to them in accomplishing any work that they do. So now that you've had this introduction that's hopefully memorable for you, when you think about your family members or your team members, how would you identify them? And then what are their needs? I've got a daughter who it's like, just tell me when it's due, I'll be there. The other one's like, well, why are we doing this in the first place? And are you sure it's really a good idea? And so some of your team members or your children will want to know the why. Why do we have to do it this way? Why do we have to do it today? Why? And sometimes as a leader or as a parent, we want to say, because I said so. And hopefully, they have enough respect for your authority and opinion that after the, adequate amount of explanation, they can move with it. Sometimes these styles will have worked long enough in the company or in the culture that they naturally just get with the system, even though that is kind of contrary to their style. So an example of that would be, the Richard Branson type that loves, let's have a party to kick this off. They know that the organization is very cost conscious, and they will do like the budget version of the kickoff because they naturally have learned that, that's what it takes to get things done. Okay. So that's the other question to ask yourself. Does this person exhibit a lot of kind of contrary behaviors to what the default boilerplate, pure D would or pure I would? Everybody has exceptions. Some have as little as 2, some have as many as 10. And often it's, how their experience in the industry, things like that, or around a particular manager that likes to work a certain way. So those exceptions or those contrary behaviors are something to consider, in that something that may not be so popular could be just fine with this style because of the adaptations that people have made. So again, going back to that analogy of the clock, if you're at 10 o'clock and one of your employees is at 4 o'clock, and you're both pretty strongly inclined in that way, you guys are going to have to work really hard to communicate. I do an exercise called Feed Forward that comes from Marshall Goldsmith. And instead of asking for feedback, something we can't do anything about, we ask a feed forward question. What is one thing this person could do that would improve your relationship with them? And many of you know I work with a lot of jerks. I don't think they're jerks. I love them. But, they tend to bark. They're highly demanding. They don't understand why people need all this stuff, And I explain to them, you need bullets. They need story. You need stuff getting done. They need relationship. So let's adapt. And one of my leaders, direct admins, said, you know what? If he just started off the week, like asking me about my weekend, said hi, I wouldn't mind the call this, cancel this, work on this, redo this, because I would know that he got where I was coming from. So I love this client because not only did they go, oh, I didn't realize they needed that. He would call her, ask for her coffee order, bring it in, spend the first 15 minutes Monday morning just catching up with her. How's things going? How was your weekend? Anything I should know about? Then they got to business, and it changed their whole relationship. She was like, Shauna, thank you. So I didn't make the suggestion about the coffee. He did it all on his own. So, but, working with him to help him create that awareness that as much as he needed to be able to rely on her and depend on her to get all these things done in his calendar and everything else, she needed him to just see her as a person. And so, what can you do? Every child has different needs. Every employee has different needs. So another example that would be really helpful is I did this assessment with a golf team that I work with. And one of the players, a very strong, competent player, she really was not into physical touch. But her coach made it a practice of when there was a 3-par, she would come up to her on the tee and put her arm around her and just really try to encourage her, because that's what the coach liked. The coach was a really touchy-feely person. She liked that kind of encouragement, etc. And so she was trying to apply what she liked in terms of support to her player. So when we finally revealed that it actually made the player anxious, and she didn't play as well on those 3 pars because of it, we all had a laugh like, oh, this probably could have been avoided. So, are there things that you're doing that you think your staff would love because you love it, or your kids would love because you love it, but it's really not the thing for them? So I think this is a good place to pause. We will go into more detail on this, but if you think about your team and the team dynamics, you probably are the one that's focusing the most on your relationship with each individual player or subordinate. But what kinds of tools have you given your team so that they work well with one another, so that they can minimize conflict and increase understanding and communicate better? One of the best ways to solve this is going through one of these workshops, because we do things like, hey, this is how I like to run my day, and everybody else goes, you what? And then they understand how to respect each other's boundaries and the things that help them perform at their best. So I'm doing a bunch of these workshops in the latter half of October. I would love to work with you and help you and your team really communicate better. My whole business is about helping leaders get people to where they need to be and communicate in a way that's not isolating, divisive, polarizing. So if you'd like to do that, just send a note to podcast@shaunacorden.com, and we would love to schedule you for a discussion about how we can help your team. So until next time, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.